this is what we want to be.
Thank you.
We're outside of Senator Susan Collins' office, and in the Jefferson Senate office building, and Susan Collins is about to give her report to tell us what she's thinking in the nomination of Brett Kavanaugh for the Supreme Court. Collins is one of the important swing voters, so this is absolutely critical. I think it was hundreds of people outside the door. It's Kavanaugh. Its main voters, it's women. We are here trying to find out what Senator Susan Collins is going to do.
We got lots of folks hanging out, all pointing cameras at each other,
Senator Susan
trying to figure out what's happening.
Senator Joe Manchin from West Virginia.
Make a hole! Make a hole! Make a hole! Let's go! Make a hole! Make a hole, folks! Make a hole! Make a hole!
Hundreds of survivors and women from all over the country who are here standing outside of Senator Susan Collins' office. She's speaking now to tell us what she's going to do in the vote for the Supreme Court justice. We have... We are not afraid. We are not afraid. Senator Susan Collins is a critical vote. In order to prevent the nomination of Brett Kavanaugh, we need Senator Susan Collins to vote no and Senator Joe Manchin from West Virginia to vote no. Susan Collins is the first one to go public with her vote and her perspective. It is a key perspective. We have been in the Senate office buildings for over a month protesting. Telling the senators. We have been in the Senate office buildings protesting for weeks, telling the truth about our stories of as survivors. And Susan Collins has often said that she is in fact a champion for women, and we're going to see today if that's true. So what you're seeing here is hundreds and hundreds of survivors from all across the country who've been here protesting for weeks. Some flew overnight to be here today to express their thoughts about what kind of Supreme Court justice they want on the court. And they definitely do not support Brett Kavanaugh. We're also out here with Anna Maria Chila from the Center for Popular Democracy, who you might remember was the woman who confronted Senator Flake in the who actually got us this extra week to be able to have the FBI investigation, even though it wasn't thorough, even though it was a total sham in a lot of ways. But thanks to her, we were able to get that extra week to be able to tell the senators what we think about this nomination.
Folks, make a hole! Make a hole, folks!
So we have more and more Capitol Police who are coming to be present for this protest here. We are outside of Senator Susan Collins' office in the Dirksen Senate office building. Shh.
Folks,
Lionel getting arrested.
Move back.
Move back to the exit.
Get arrested, stay here.
So the crowd is getting quieter because Senator Collins is speaking now.
Arrested, stay. If you're not, go. Media, y'all gonna back it up too. Everybody back it up. If you get
So-
arrested, stay. If not, move down the hallway.
So we're about to find out if what Susan Collins's perspective is. Do you want to go in?
Arrest sexual predators, not protesters. Arrest sexual predators, not protesters.
So the Capitol Police is already moving us away.
Arrest sexual predators, not protesters.
So the Capitol Police is already removing people from the hallways regarding what Senator Susan Collins is going to be deciding to do. We are outside of Senator Susan Collins' office listening, not for arrest. They're already preparing to arrest people outside of Senator Susan Collins' office. We don't know what she's going to say. So we're here at Susan Collins' office. They're moving. We're moving us. They're moving us away from Senator Susan Collins' office. We actually don't know what the answer is going to be. We don't know what the perspective is going to be. This is the Dirksen Senate office building. We're on the 4th floor of the Senate office building. And they're just moving us far away from Senator Collins' office. We don't know what she's going to say. So what you're seeing is us not being able to have access to our senators' offices. So this is such a critical time in our democracy. Senator Susan Collins from Maine is one of the swing votes. We need her. We need Senator Joe Manchin to be voting no on Brett Kavanaugh. What's she saying? So we're able to watch her a little bit online.
Special interest groups race to be the first to oppose him, including one organization that didn't even bother to fill in the judge's name on its pre-written.
We're listening to Susan Collins giving a speech on the floor of the Senate right now.
Donald Trump's nomination of XX to the Supreme Court of the United States. Senators joined the recent session, but they were beaten to the punch by one of our colleagues who actually announced opposition before the nominee's identity was even known. Since that time, we have seen special interest groups whip their followers into a frenzy by spreading misrepresentations and outright falsehoods about Judge Kavanaugh's judgment. And distortions of his record and testimony at his first hearing produce short-lived headlines which, although devoted hours later, continue to live on and be spread through social media. Interest groups have also spent an unprecedented amount of dark money opposing this nomination.
So for those of you who are watching Susan Collins right now, you can hear that she's making the case that it was special interest groups spreading dark money that were a coordinated attack on Brett Kavanaugh. Well, I can assure you that the protesters that came to the Capitol for the last month were expressing their honest truth.
It is
about their experience as survivors.
Individual senator to decide what the Constitution's advice and consent duty means. Informed by Alexander Hamilton's Federalist 76, I have interpreted this to mean that the president has broad discretion to consider a nominee for lawsuit, whereas my duty as a senator is to focus on the nominee's qualifications as long as that nominee's philosophy is within the
So they're continuing to move us back from Senator Collins's office as she gives her floor speech.
Right now, you're unlawfully demonstrating. If you do not cease, you're subject to an arrest. This is your third warning.
Arrest sexual predators, not protesters.
Everybody down and around the hall right now. Everybody down and around the hall.
Oh, we got to move this way, guys. We can get a shot of people. Down this way, sir.
So they're going to continue to move the media and the press far away from Senator Collins's office. As we are trying to cover what's actually happening.
Step back. All the way down the corner. Back and around.
Farther and farther away.
Keep on walking. Keep moving back.
The Capitol Police have provided a significant amount of security. We are not even allowed to be anywhere near Collins's office while they are moving everybody away. It's scary, I will admit. It is often scary when the police do such an extraordinary job of moving people back.
Let's go, folks. All of you on the corner. Let's go.
The cameras are continuing to run, thank goodness. This is one of the benefits of the act.tv coverage here and having this amazing live stream on site so you can actually see what's happening. We are outside of Senator Susan Collins' office from Maine as she gives her presentation to the floor of the Senate. Unfortunately, we don't know exactly what she's saying tonight, only from what people are saying online.
Down this hallway. Keep moving. You with camera. Down this hallway.
I presume as she's getting to her decision, her explanation decision.
I'm asking you to move that way. And you asking me questions. That's what's wrong right now. Whose camera equipment is this? Mine. Keep moving, folks. Keep moving.
Sit around the corner.
Keep moving, folks. Keep moving. Step down this way, please.
Make a hole, get out of the way,
So we know that Susan Collins is still making her statement on the floor of the Senate right now.
constitutional grounds. He has argued for severing the invalid clause as surgically as possible while allowing the overall law.
It's really sounding like she is fully supporting his experience and history. And I can tell you from experience of being here for the last month protesting this terrible nominee that this is a devastating development in this situation. We don't know exactly what point she's getting to right now, but we know that she's making a case for Brett Kavanaugh's decisions about particular policies. And this is an example of the protests that are going to happen. Honestly, the rage of survivors is going to be unprecedented. And I do believe that if Brett Kavanaugh is confirmed, that we will see a protest and a backlash unlike we've ever seen in this country. The intensity is growing all the time as people start to realize what's actually happening.
I believe this is the mark of this issue. The fact that Judge Kavanaugh offered this legislative proposal suggests that he believes that the president does not have such a protection currently.
Yeah. So we're continuing to be here at the Dirksen Senate office building, outside the office of Senator Susan Collins, as she's giving her statement on the floor of the Senate. We're listening to her coverage from other folks that are listening online, and from what we can tell, it's not a good. It doesn't sound like it's good news with regard to her position. She's currently defending Brett Kavanaugh's decisions and his impartiality, and I will say that this is a devastating turn of events in our democracy. So I can assure you that the protesters like me who've been here for weeks and weeks and weeks, it's just an absolutely devastating turn of events for folks if she votes to confirm him. So I do want to remind you all of strategy, however, which is we do still have 24 hours. The final vote will be tomorrow. The final vote will be tomorrow. And no matter what she says or what she decides, there are still phone calls to make, and there still are conversations to have. The Senate's final vote is tomorrow. So there is still an opportunity to have conversations. Now we get to go back to Senator Collins' office to get a sense of what her decision is going to be. So here we are outside the office.
Hallway clear. Stay on the sides. Make a hole. Make a hole. Make a hole.
Not yet. She hasn't come to a conclusion yet.
That means she can go in. One person can squeeze in. That's fire capacity.
We all have to remember the tension is really high out here, and we still have 20 hours. We still have 20 hours. Let me go over here. So what you see here is that we're directly outside Senator Susan Collins' office. The Capitol Police are not letting people come in or out. We have staff inside that office where women have been sitting there all day telling their survivor stories and trying to get a chance to express their truth to the senator. What's she saying? Are you listening? Yeah, she's still just talking. It sounds like yes. Yeah. About, like, while we are in fact outside of Senator Susan Collins' office as she's speaking on the floor right now. So I'm sure those of you who are watching this live stream are actually watching both things. We are getting a sense that what she's describing is support for Brett Kavanaugh's perspective, for his decision making, for his impartiality, and we know from studying, from experiencing Brett Kavanaugh in his testimony, as well as his long history of decisions, we know where he stands on so many of these issues, and we know that he is not the Supreme Court justice that we want. So we have an extraordinary number of protesters, survivors, women who are here that have been here expressing their reality and their truth for weeks. These are not paid protesters. These are people who are telling their truth, trying to tell their truth through their elected representatives.
Clear the hall, please.
There's room for the press. This is the public building. You have room for the press, but not for
So we continue to stand outside of Susan Collins's office in the Dirksen Senate office building. Senator Susan Collins from Maine is still sitting on the floor, or still speaking on the floor of the Senate, has been for quite some time now, explaining her perspective of this nomination. Senator Collins is truly a key vote here. We have the undecided vote of Susan Collins and Democrat Joe Manchin from West Virginia. These are the two folks that could actually decide to confirm or not confirm Brett Kavanaugh to be on the Supreme Court. We do still have 20 hours. So this is merely a statement by Senator Collins about her decision, but the final vote will not be until tomorrow. There is still time for us to express our truth, our support, our feelings for survivors and to believe survivors. But there's a lot at stake, and the tensions are really high here. You've had folks that have been showing up to the Senate office buildings for weeks now. One of the interesting or almost heartbreaking parts of this process is really how women from all across the country have been flying in to talk to their elected representatives, telling their stories, telling their survivor stories. It's just heartbreaking stories of sexual assault and sexual abuse, issues that are front and center in this fight. So you've got an extraordinary number of Capitol Police who are here. Oh, I can. So hi, I'm Heidi Seek, the CEO and co-founder of Vote Pro-Choice. Vote Pro-Choice is so proud to be in partnership with act.tv, who's been here for the last few weeks covering all the protests that we've been doing here. So we're at the Senate Dirksen office building outside of Susan Collins' office while she's making a statement on the Senate floor about her position on the nomination of Brett Kavanaugh. So we can't hear a statement where we are right now, but we are hearing some live streams from other people, and we have a sense of what she's saying. And for those of us who've been out on the streets and protesting for the last few weeks, it's disheartening to hear her perspective of supporting this nomination. So what you have here are protesters from all across the country. You've got media. You've got folks that are coming from all over the country to express their truth. So we're out here with act.tv on the Dirksen Senate office, in the Dirksen Senate office building outside of Susan Collins' office. The Capitol Police has already arrested a significant number of people who were just sitting in the hallways trying to express their truth and their belief about believing survivors and their opposition to the nomination of Brett Kavanaugh to be a Supreme Court justice. We've been in these halls for many, many weeks right now, coming from all walks of life, folks jumping on planes and coming with just short notice to come and tell their stories to these senators. It's actually an extraordinary time in our democracy. We're seeing firsthand the priorities of a lot of our elected officials, which are, in a lot of ways, to stay in power and to stay elected. We're also seeing quite starkly how very disconnected a lot of our senators and politicians are from their constituents. All of these senators have had hundreds and hundreds of survivors and women showing up in their offices to tell their stories, speaking their truth, expressing their dismay at not only the record of Brett Kavanaugh, but also his demeanor and how we truly do believe the women who have accused this nominee of sexual assault. Dr. Christine Blasey Ford, Deborah Ramirez, Julie Swetnick, and all of the expressions of opposition to this nominee. But we are seeing, in fact, the Republican Senate has committed themselves to a strategy, have committed themselves to a strategy of getting a political operative on the Supreme Court. So once again, the Capitol Police are moving us out of the vicinity of Susan Collins' office. Nothing's happening. They're just moving us again. Susan Collins is still speaking on the floor of the Senate right now. So once again, they're moving us out of the vicinity of Senator Collins' office. She's still speaking on the floor. Because we're here in the office, we're not sure, we actually don't have a visual on her her statement on the floor of the Senate office building. So those of you who are watching this live stream probably know more about what she's actually saying and what's This is the second round of the Capitol Police moving all of us away from Senator Collins' office. I have no idea the perspective of moving us. There's media that's trying to cover.
Folks in the corner, we need you to move all the way to the Hart Building. Keep moving back.
They're going to be moving us out of Dirksen to the Hart Building.
Folks in the corner, we need you to move all the way to the Hart Building. Keep moving back, please.
They're literally clearing out the entire Dirksen floor around Senator Susan Collins' office.
Move back to the Hart Building. Keep moving, please.
I have to say, as a as a taxpayer and a person that's worked in these buildings for 20 years, it is unprecedented the amount of the lack of access that we've had over the past month. It's like
we need you to keep moving back.
It is
all the way to the heart.
It's an extraordinary feeling in the offices.
Keep moving back, please.
We're still walking.
So the Capitol Police are shutting the floor down. Yeah. This is really, truly quite extraordinary, where the Capitol Police are shutting down the floor of Susan Collins' office. Well, that certainly cannot be a good sign. I will say, of the 30 years that I've been working out of this building is truly an extraordinary experience.
Whose Senate? Our Senate.
So they're going to be moving us into the Hart Building right now, which is shutting down the floor where Susan Collins' office is. So there's a whole lot of pro-Kavanaugh protesters that we're seeing also in these offices. We're outside of Lamar Alexander's office, where it's just packed full of pro-Kavanaugh, women for Kavanaugh. Sorry. So they are also watching Senator Susan Collins' speech, trying to find out what's going on, what her perspective is going to be. The Capitol Police continued to move us to the Hart Building outside. We were outside of Senator Susan Collins' office, but that is not happening anymore. It is a very extraordinary time in our democracy. You can't say that enough, where our access to the buildings, the Senate office buildings, are restricted significantly. They're literally shutting down the floor where Senator Susan Collins' office is. It's just extraordinary. It's absolutely extraordinary. So those of you who are watching, we're here on the 4th floor of the Dirksen Senate office building where Senator Susan Collins' office is, and they're moving us off the floor. Senator Susan Collins is still...
Colin hates women. Colin hates health care. Colin kills women. Colin takes our health care.
Collins needs to vote no. Collins needs to respect women, respect health care.
Collins doesn't trust survivors.
Collins needs to stop talking and vote no. Do the right thing, Senator Collins. Do the right thing for women. Do the right thing for your sons and your husbands and your fathers and your daughters.
So we're here on the 4th floor of the Dirksen office building. We're being completely removed from the floor where Senator Susan Collins' office is.
They get a health care vote with the tax bill.
Hundreds and hundreds of protesters and survivors and people who have come from all over the country to tell their stories. want to know what Senator Susan Collins is going to do. From what we can discern from her remarks right now is that she is definitely leaning toward supporting Brett Kavanaugh. Now, I want you all to remember, though, this is just a statement. The full Senate vote will not happen until tomorrow, so we do still have 20 hours. This is not the final vote. However, Senator Collins is a very, very critical vote. And with Senator Collins's vote, an expression of support for Brett Kavanaugh, the one undecided vote that we know of is Democrat Joe Manchin from West Virginia, who will likely vote the same as Susan Collins. We don't know. So what you're seeing here are people as close as they possibly can get to Senator Susan Collins' office. The Capitol Police have shut down the floor where her office is.
Stand up for women. Stand up for healthcare. Stand up for women.
Stand up for healthcare. Stand up for women. Stand up for healthcare. Stand up for women. Stand up for healthcare. Stand up for women. Stand up for healthcare. Stand up for women. Stand up for healthcare. Stand up for women. Stand up for healthcare. Stand up for women. Stand up for women. Stand up for healthcare. Stand up for women. Stand up for healthcare. Stand up for women.
So Susan Collins continues to speak on the floor of the Senate, standing in front of two women senators who are also supporting Brett Kavanaugh. It's a difficult day right now in our democracy, and it's certainly difficult for those of us who have been showing up week after week to protest.
Hello. Okay, I'm at the fourth floor, Dirksen stairwell, where they talk. 419 in Hart.
Yes.
You okay? So we're still here on the fourth floor of Dirksen. They've actually removed us from the floor where Senator Susan Collins' office is. We've been completely removed from the floor. They shut the air conditioner off on the floor. And there's no one allowed except for staff on that fourth floor of office building, while Senator Susan Collins is currently giving her statement on the floor of the Senate. So we're here today with media and protesters from all over the country who have come to express their truth and their lack of support for this nomination, to say the least. It is a very difficult time in our democracy right now as we think about what this means for people who will be impacted by this Supreme Court nomination. So many of us have come out to try to express to our senators what we think. Senator Collins is now talking about sexual assault.
and treated with respect. The Me Too movement is real. It matters. It is needed. And it is long overdue. We know that rape and sexual assault are less likely to be reported to the police than other forms of assault. On average, an estimated 211,000 rapes and sexual assaults every year.
Back up.
We must listen to survivors every day.
You're closing the door?
So now the Capitol Police are now closing the door to the Dirksen House Office building, which is actually truly unbelievable. So they've now completely sealed off. They've completely sealed off the floor where Senator Susan Collins' office is.
I'm not making it to this meeting.
Completely crazy.
I was here for a totally unrelated meeting, and they're not allowing me to go.
Seriously?
Yeah, I was supposed to be meeting with the help committee today, and they're not allowing me into the room.
Oh my goodness.
Sorry.
So you were just here as a Senate. You were here as just a Senate or a person
A
meeting
visitor
with a senator.
a Senate staff. Yeah, I was meeting with Senate staff about, the meeting had been scheduled weeks ago. I had RSVP'd to the meeting. I was running a little late, and I wasn't allowed in.
Go.
Now you're in.
Yeah, it is it's just extraordinary.
Now they're saying they won't even allow me in even if an escort shows up from the Senate office.
And you're meeting with the Health Committee.
Help committee. Yeah.
The Health Committee. That's irony.
Yeah, sorry.
Yeah. So it is extraordinary. Once again, very extraordinary. So we are here on the 4th floor of the Dirksen Senate Office building. Well, actually, we're in Hart now because we've been completely removed. We've been completely removed from the floor where Senator Susan Collins' office is. We are trying to cover a reaction to her comments and reaction to her speech. So we actually don't have access to watching what she's saying real time. We do have some folks that are around us that are listening, and so we have a sense of what she's saying. But those of you who are watching online are probably have a better sense of what she's saying real time. We are also are concerned and devastated by the potential that Senator Susan Collins may not, she may in fact support the Supreme Court nomination of Brett Kavanaugh. So we're facing some significant amount of reaction to this outcome. So I will say, just on behalf of a person that's been here protesting for the last month, truly trying to express our feelings about this nomination and the situation, it's just truly a devastating thing. You know, I'm very, very grateful to the work of Vote Pro-Choice, my team at Vote Pro-Choice, and the folks at act.tv who've been present and live streaming all of the protests and actions that have been happening over the last month. It's very important for everyone to see the truth of what's going on in their democracy, and that's what's a great thing about the coverage that we've been doing. So you can see the thousands and thousands of people who have been showing up and trying to tell the truth to their senators. Over 2,000 people have been arrested in acts of nonviolent civil disobedience, attempting to express their feelings to their senators, their elected officials in the halls of the Senate, the buildings that we all pay for our tax dollars. Even yesterday, there were 602 protesters that were arrested in the Hart Atrium. Dozens and dozens, if not hundreds, of survivors of sexual assault and sexual abuse have been showing up to their Senate office buildings to try to tell their stories of survival. But we've learned a lot about the priorities of our elected officials, that's for sure. And we're seeing it right now in stark relief. So, on a personal note, as the founder and CEO of Vote Pro Choice, we always try to keep a perspective on what's at stake, which is a whole lot for a lot of people, particularly reproductive freedom. But I also want to remind us all that there is still 20 hours until the final vote of the Senate. So no matter what Susan Collins says, no matter what, we do still have a shot. Now, we know that these senators have a perspective that does not reflect their constituents anymore. So many of Susan Collins' constituents and all of the constituents of the senators have been showing up and trying to explain what they think is important with regard to this Supreme Court nominee. And, you know, so many of folks actually opposed this nominee before we even knew the allegations of the sexual assault of Dr. Christine Blasey Ford. I was one of the first people in the hearing room and the fourth person to get arrested on the first day of his hearing. So I can tell you, after looking at his record and reviewing the perspective of this judge, he is in fact a political operative. And this is a strategic outcome of the Republican Party and the conservative leaders of the party. So if you keep that in perspective, which is this is a strategic outcome, they are certainly achieving their goals. However, if we can look on the bright side of things, this is the first time in our democracy where issues that affect sexual assault and sexual abuse survivors have become front and center. Anyone who's ever worked in reproductive rights or even public health knows that sexual assault and sexual abuse trauma is a significant impact upon our public health. That there are millions and millions of survivors and people who have been victims of sexual assault, sexual abuse, but never before has it been so front and center on the issues that are facing our democracy. So if there is a bright side, it's that the truth of so many people, millions of people in our country, is now been presented to everyone to consider, particularly our elected officials. Now, those of us that vote pro-choice, we know that 72% at a minimum of American voters believe that there should be reproductive freedom in America, and that the perspective of the GOP and these partisan Republican leaders is not reflective upon the will of the constituents. And that's what we're seeing today. We're seeing that the GOP and the Republican leaders are going to attempt to confirm a Supreme Court nominee that does not reflect America.
No, there's somebody in what's-his-name's office.
So,
like they're all sitting in there. And
again, the good news is that in 31 days, the midterms will be happening.
They're sitting on the floor in there. But they weren't arrested. But apparently sitting on the floor is an arrestable offense.
What?
That's why those people were arrested. Because they sat on the floor. And today. Oh, sorry. Okay.
Tried to talk with them and they shut the door. I saw that there was an office out there that had pro-Kavanaugh people that were allowed to stay. The rest of us were herded down this way.
They're protecting the white country.
Okay, we're gonna try to go down to the meeting and see what it is.
That came from the people who were allowed to stay.
She just voted yes. Did she just say yes?
We've heard a lot of charges and counter charges about Judge Kavanaugh. But as those who have known
Senator Susan Collins. Senator Susan Collins has just about to make her final statement, and she is going to support the confirmation of Brett Kavanaugh.
despite the
Maybe we go down to Hart. Do you want to?
Whether or not the testimony did it not matter whatever she said?
So here's a group of women supporting the confirmation of Judge Kavanaugh.
As a woman, hearing that, how does that make you feel? Hearing someone, and then also hearing Kavanaugh speak. How do you decipher what is true and what's not true?
You're having a compelling story and an emotional story. A lot of women in our office, in our organization, people, members, and supporters of CUA have two stories of their own. The CEO and president of Consumer of America is a survivor of mental rape and physical assault.
Get to the point,
so
you grandstanding treater. Get to the
it's
point.
likely that Dr. Ford experienced something traumatic. So no, it's not just about her having a compelling story and being able to empathize with them, because we absolutely do. But it is about facts and due process, and there being evidence and corroboration, and that wasn't there. So, you know, I really do hurt for her, and I think that it's really sad.
We're currently in the stairwell of the Hart Senate office building waiting for the final statement of Senator Susan Collins. We ran into a group of women who are supporting Brett Kavanaugh's nomination to the Supreme Court, and we are very curious to see what they have to say for just a few minutes.
Movement remains pure and remains what it is, and a way for women to share their stories in an honest way. And like she was saying, that it's not manipulated or used in any way. And the danger here is that if we allow it to now, it's not honest, and it's actually working against it.
So we're going to head down to the Hart Atrium. We got a little perspective of the other side. And that is definitely not a perspective that I share.
No. Hi.
So we're headed down to the Hart Atrium as we prepare for the inevitable statement of Senator Susan Collins. So most of the protesters that are here to express their absolute dismay at the nomination of Brett Kavanaugh have been removed from the fourth floor of the Senate Durson office building. And now we're headed down to the Hart Atrium. To be ready to hear the final decision of Susan Collins. So this is the Hart Senate office building where many of us have walked in protest of the Supreme Court Justice nomination. And I can tell you for certain that there are a lot of people in America. I can tell you for certain there is a lot of very, very devastated people who are here that have been protesting the nomination for weeks. So we now have her a clear picture of what Senator Susan Collins is going to be doing, which is voting for So we're back here at the Hart Senate office building. In the atrium where so many protesters have been We are here in the Hart Senate Office building where so many protesters have been trying to express their truth for the Senate to the senators in order to oppose the nomination of Brett Kavanaugh. Here we have Anna Maria Achila from the Center for Popular Democracy. Yep. Anna Maria, would you like to... We're live with act.tv.
Yeah.
Right here. So do you have a response? Do you have any initial thoughts about what you heard from Senator Susan Collins?
Senator Collins totally failed the test and failed to grab the opportunity that women offered to her to show how to govern by listening, how to restore some justice and some the centrality of people in our democracy. She totally failed the test. She's standing right behind Trump, who mocked a survivor just a few days ago. She lined up right behind him, and all of us are going to do everything in our power to make sure that someone who actually knows how to listen to people represents the amazing people of Maine.
Yeah. Can you talk about the Be a Hero campaign?
The Be a Hero campaign is an effort by thousands and thousands and thousands of people who have decided that they will force elected officials to govern by listening. And in Maine, over 70,000 people have made very small donations to crowdsourcing to support someone, to Senator Collins if she supports Brett Kavanaugh for the Supreme Court. She has just declared her future for the next several years. We will continue to raise money, and we will do it not just in Senator Collins's district or in the state of Maine. We will do it across the country.
Well, and thank you so much for your bravery and for being the woman in the elevator. Saying, "Look at me." I think you bought us a week, and at least we had a chance to express our thoughts to the senators for another week, and we got a little bit of FBI investigation. Not what we wanted.
Right. But okay, so a week ago, Senator Flake put out a statement saying that he was supporting Brett Kavanaugh in the Judiciary Committee, and then he rolled it back. The vote has not happened, so we cannot disarm. We have to keep coming to Washington, D.C., making our voices heard, trying to find our senators. They are declaring their intentions now. They have not voted, and we cannot give up this fight until the very last minute.
Yeah, that's right. Thank you so much for all that you've done. So we do still have 20 hours before the final vote. Not all hope is lost. We have heard that Senator Susan Collins is supporting Brett Kavanaugh. This is a critical swing vote, but she's just stated an intention, and we know how things can change in an instant. So people are starting to gather here in the Hart Atrium after hearing Senator Susan Collins' statement and her perspective. And there's a lot of people that have some thoughts about that. So we should take a look around and see who's here, and we'll get some more statements from folks. Do you want to talk?
About what?
Why are you here?
Why am I here?
I'll take that.
Yeah, all right.
What's your name?
My name is Anu, A-N-U, from...
And where are you from?
From New York. Yeah.
And why are you here?
I'm here to get justice for the survivors. This is a huge moment for survivors, and this is really... They say it could go one way or the other, but I say it's a huge opportunity and a huge awakening for survivors, and we need to do everything we have. We need to do everything we can and give everything we have to make sure that we get justice for survivors.
Thank you so much for being here. I know how hard that it is.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. We also have heard that Senator Joe Manchin is expressing a statement that he will be voting yes to support Brett Kavanaugh. So that's very, very, very disappointing. But we will continue to express ourselves, and we do have 20 hours until the vote. So not all hope is lost. It's not great news, but it is not all hope is lost. So you see folks are gathering here in the Hart Atrium. Not all hope is lost. So, hi there.
Hi.
I'm happy to see you.
I'm happy to see you.
So what's your name and where are you from?
I'm Chris Pubser from Los Angeles.
And Chris and I were arrested outside of Susan Collins' office last week. That's right. So Chris, tell us a little bit about your journey here and how you're feeling right now.
Well, I found out about the Bird Dog Nation last summer, and so I've been working with Center for Popular Democracy and Housing Works, and now Women's March for a couple months on trying to stop this nomination. And we get to be sad for 5 minutes, and then we're going to pick ourselves up and keep fighting, and we'll be back, and we'll make our country what we want it to be. It's just a hard work. Thank you for all you do.
Yeah. We're doing good work around here, that's for sure. So we continue to gather here, and we have coverage with act.tv, and we're going to be all gathering here at the Hart Atrium after the news of Susan Collins supporting Brett Kavanaugh, and we're also hearing that Joe Manchin from West Virginia is also going to be voting yes. So it's dire and difficult, but we will continue to try to stay positive and fight. So let's take a look around the atrium so you can see who's here. Hey, will you all do a live stream on act.tv? Yeah, but we just were supporting people that are arrested.
It's up to us.
I just feel rage. I honestly just feel rage. Like I can't even feel excited for this live stream. Sorry, I'm sorry.
One more. So I have one more, Jen. So we are here at the Hart Senate office, or Senate atrium, where we've been a lot over the last month protesting the nomination of Brett Kavanaugh. So we don't have it's not great news today in that Senator Susan Collins has agreed to support the nominee, and we also have heard that Senator Joe Manchin from West Virginia has too. But there are so many tireless protesters that have been here for weeks and weeks, expressing their truth and inspiring so many people who are stepping out for the first time and telling their stories and telling their truth about democracy. So we have some of the most amazing folks in America who are here leading these protests. So I'd like to introduce you to one. This is Jennifer Epps Addison.
I feel like we need to hug it out.
Yeah, we do. Oh, we do. So Jennifer is the president of Center for Popular Democracy, the organization that has been coordinating all of the people that are just coming here from all over the country to express their truth to their senators. And that is what they are doing, thousands of people expressing their truth. And Jennifer and I had the great honor of being early protesters on that first day. Before we even knew about the sexual assault allegations, we knew that he was not right for America. So Jennifer, can you tell me a little bit about what you've been up to the past few weeks and how you're feeling right now?
I mean, what have I been up to? Look, I have had the great honor of meeting heroes and survivors from all across the country. It has been a refreshing course on what democracy really means. Democracy is not what you do on election day. It's not going to vote for a candidate. It is the work of building a country that represents and works for all of us every single day. And so many tens of thousands of people have stepped up and into that work over the last couple of weeks. How am I feeling? I'm feeling ready. I don't know about you, but November is coming.
Yes.
And 31 days. And I'm feeling very, very, very grateful because I know that the women who have been coming and telling their stories, they're going to turn that rage, that righteous anger, that sacred rage, they're going to turn it into action this November and beyond. So, look, like everybody, I was disgusted by Susan Collins' speech. It was partisan. It was, it refused to acknowledge the survivors who have been from her own district, who have been telling their stories. But it was also very telling. And you know what? Right now, right at this moment, there is a $2 million fund that has just opened up to fund her next Democratic opponent. And so, 55,000 plus people across this country are saying, you know what, Susan, you don't want to stand up and be a hero for us? That's okay. We can find our own heroes. We are heroes. We're willing to band together and make a change.
Oh, yeah. And thank you again. Thank you so much for your incredible organization and the work that you do. I think one of the things that bothered me a lot about the narrative of what we've been protesting is that it is somehow not authentic. It's generated by some corporate donation, whatever. And I know from my experience, this has been a totally authentic expression of our values. And I wondered if you had some thoughts about that.
Look, first and foremost, they would not be attacking women and attacking survivors if they did not understand that the majority of this country does not want them to confirm Brett Kavanaugh. But to say that what has happened here is anything but heroic or authentic is, to deny the fact that women, so many women, were telling their stories for the first time in this moment. Survivors should not have to bare their souls to get us to live up to the promise of our democracy, and yet that's what tens of thousands of people have done. For Ana Maria and I, my co-director Ana Maria Archila, who confronted Jeff Flake in that elevator, we've spent our entire lives working in democratic people's organizations. We've seen the power of organizing when it can turn, poverty, go nowhere jobs into good family supporting careers, when it can turn dangerous and dirty environments into healthy and clean living spaces, when it can take a broken criminal justice system and transform it into something that really gives people the freedom to thrive. We know what democratic people's organizations can do. So we're not ashamed. We're incredibly proud to be leading the Center for Popular Democracy Action, to be a part of a network of more than 52 grassroots organizations in 34 states who are all throwing down together to build our power. They can call us any names that they want, but we know what it means to have people who are directly impacted organizing to transform their lives. And by the way, if they're mad at us, wait until they find out about Rosa Parks, because it's just going to blow their mind.
Oh, yes, that's exactly right. Thank you again so much for everything that you've done. And I will say that one of the most beautiful things about this month is all of these organizations and people coming together that have been doing the work in various different ways in different places. And we really did come together from all across the country. So that was a beautiful thing, and you facilitated that.
I mean, I want to say it wasn't just organizations blatantly. I think we actually need to say it was women-led organizations, and specifically there were a number of women of color-led organizations. Yes. And I think that matters, right? There were people in the mainstream, even in grassroots organizing, who were saying, yeah, this is lost. Let's not waste our energy. Let's stay focused on November. And it was women, even before, as you said, the Kavanaugh allegations came out, it was women who said, this man is too dangerous, he is unfit to serve, and we're not going to allow a confirmation process to happen without making our voices heard. So when people are thinking about how do we go into November, who do we invest our resources in, who do we follow, I hope they learn something from the powerful women who have organized this resistance, and they invest in those women moving forward.
That's awesome. Thank you so much. And that's right, it's 31 days until November, so 31 days. And that's when everything changes. I know it. I know. That's the one bright light at the end of this tunnel is that everything's going to change. Thank you so much. Thank you. Oh, thank you. Thank you. So, you want to speak on
Fuck Trump, fuck Manchin, fuck Collins, fuck Trump.
We're going to do another one.
Every single day.
All right.
So, hi there, and tell us what your name. Tell us your name, where you're from, and why you're here.
My name is Dr. Sofia Marjanovic. I am of the Oglala Lakota community in Fort Peck Reservation in Montana, but I live here in Bethesda, Maryland. I am here because I lost custody of my 28-month-old breastfeeding son in Anne Arundel Circuit County Court to my domestic abuser. In 70 to 90% of cases where men ask for custody in the United States, they get custody, they get sole physical and legal custody. Because the majority of people who are Indigenous person talking here, you're silencing me.
Okay, let's wait.
Let me have some space at least. Don't silence me. All right, so I lost custody of my son to my domestic abuser. In 70 to 90% of cases where men ask for custody of children, they get it because the majority of men who ask for custody of children are abusers. They get it.
Warning for demonstrating in the building.
All right. I'm doing an interview.
We're here for your well-being. Okay. We're here for your well-being. And we'll just tell your story.
Yeah.
And we're going to join the crew, okay?
Yeah.
Yeah, we're here. Okay. Thank you for being here. We're with you, sister.
Yeah. So I'm here because I lost custody of my son. I haven't seen my son in 3 years because my abuser has restricted custody of my son. I've tried to seek justice in the lower courts. I got a restraining order, a permanent restraining order, and despite having a permanent restrainer, I lost custody of my son to my domestic abuser. I haven't seen my son in 3 years because my domestic abuser has used the lower courts to demonstrate litigation abuse. Most people don't know that, and a lot of women's organizations aren't covering our children. I'm here because I'm a mother and I've lost custody of my child, and children deserve to be believed as well when it comes to abuse. Right now, we got a resolution. I'm part of a group in coalition with Mothers of Lost Children. We've been coming to the halls of Congress for about 13 years now. They just got a resolution passed unanimously in Congress last week. It's called House Concurrent Resolution 72, so that we now have standard scientific methodology for family courts, because right now, you guys have heard of the Woody Allen case and Mia Farrow. You remember that they claim that mothers somehow plant abuse stories into the heads of children, and that's how they take children away. And they are using something called parental reunification parental unification therapy, and they use. They claim that we're they say our children have parental alienation syndrome, and we're falsely implanting abuse stories into our children. That parental reunification therapy is exactly like gay conversion therapy. Our children are in danger, and no one is believing us in the courts.
Yeah. And you make a good point of how important it is for us to know the perspective of our judges.
Yeah,
for sure, and how incredibly important that is.
Judges have judicial discretion, as you see with Brock Turner and all these other cases where men are getting off. They can decide to admit evidence, deny evidence, and mothers like myself are getting denied evidence being admitted, and we're not having justice in the lower court. So if Brett Kavanaugh gets confirmed, we have no hope to get justice at a higher court.
Thank you so much for telling your story. Yeah. Thank you so much. Thank you. So we're here at the Hart Atrium, and we're gathering together as a community for, after we've heard about the perspective of Senator Susan Collins and Senator Joe Manchin. And it's a difficult time for all of us. These are a lot of the protesters that have been here for months, and it's hard to know what to think about all of this. I will be honest. So you see, devoted people who have been protesting for a long time. So, here, hey, let's come right here. Come here, Maine. So, what's very devastating about Susan Collins's statement, come over here, is so many women and survivors and people from Maine have come here to D.C. to tell her what they think and their truth and their stories and their perspective and how they want her to vote. So it was particularly devastating, I'm sure, for you to hear the senator's statement and her decision. Could you tell us a little bit about yourself and where you're from and why you're here and anything else you'd like to say?
Sure. My name is Nicole, and I live in Bowdoin, Maine. I am an educator and a singer, and I'm here because Mainers had a message for Senator Collins that we hoped to be able to deliver in person. Unfortunately, she wouldn't meet with us. I don't think that it was a mistake that she didn't meet with us. I think that she didn't want to meet with us and then vote the way that she did, and she was too scared to look us in the eye and hear our stories and have to face up to what she's doing. In her speech, she created an entirely new reality where unicorns dance around on rainbows, and Brett Kavanaugh is a moderate, which is completely false. I imagine that she believes it, but I don't know if she's the most naive senator, politician to come out of Maine, or if she's just the one who cares least about what her constituents think. But it's incredibly disappointing that she made this vote, and I am one of thousands of Mainers who is committed to voting her out, and we will take her seat the next time it comes up.
Yeah, that's absolutely right. And you're from Maine too?
Yeah, I live in. My name's Amanda. I live in South Portland. I'm also an educator. Honestly, I'm here. I'm just like blown away by what just happened, and it's like it's still so like raw for me. Something that like really struck me was how she talks about innocence before proven guilty and the due process and the law, and my students many of them are students of color. I taught in Oakland, actually, in California, and I live in Portland, and I just like, there are just so many black and brown children in this country that are not given that. And all she did today was uphold white male entitlement across the board, privilege, and it hurts my soul, It really does. So
thank you, and thank you for being here.
Thank
really,
you.
truly.
Thank
I
you.
appreciate it. This is act.tv, and
Cool.
so we are just live streaming so folks can hear the story. Yeah. So we're going to get to talk a little bit about what just happened.
One that was unnecessary, that was just cruel. Yep. That had things in it that I never thought that I'd hear from Senator Collins. The good news is we never have to be nice to Senator Collins again. So many of you have been here day in and day out.
Everybody's in the same
On August
boat.
1st, you came time and time and time again during the SCOTUS hearings. Many of you got arrested for the first time. Many of you got arrested for the first time on one day, and then the second time and third time on that same day. Many of you. There's still some time, and miracles have happened. We were in this spot when the Affordable Care Act was about to be repealed. We didn't think that we had the votes. And then at the last minute, one of the senators found their soul and voted the right way to save the lives of millions of Americans. That still could happen. Right now, I think all of us maybe need some time to just say how you're feeling. And then I think we're gonna march out of here and we're just gonna take some streets.
Yeah. Yep. Yep.
Does anyone else have anything they want to say?
Yep. Yep.
Anna Maria? Paul's raising his hand. First, Fast and High. Bird Dog Nation. The first question.
How many people have bird dogged for the first time in the last year? That's amazing, because you know what happened. How many of you have been bird dogging since 2006? No, how many people have been bird dogging since 1998?
Thank you.
So in 2020 presidential cycle starts basically November 10th. And what we already know that we're going to ask questions: will you defend a women's right to choose? Will you get healthcare, high quality healthcare to every single person in the country? Will you lower the cost of medicine? Will you defend immigrants? We're also, turns out, going to ask another question of all the 2020 candidates. Guess what it is?
Expand the Supreme Court.
Will you expand the Supreme Court? If you live in an early primary state, if you live in a state near an early primary state, if you live in a state that has the candidates in it, if you live in a state that is of the fourth set of states, which is actually about 20 states go just a few days after Nevada, right? So like a lot of like small, like Oklahoma, Alabama, also California. So all of a sudden a whole bunch of states are really, really powerful, and they're going to have to, we're going to get all of those candidates to sign off on increasing the size of the Supreme Court with your bird dogging.
Half women. Yes. Should be half women.
Should be half women.
Should be all women.
Should be two-thirds women.
All women.
All women. There's a few good guys. Well, we gotta do it.
Yeah, but they've had their time.
Yeah, they've had their turn.
Yeah,
right.
that's
anyone else?
So, the greatest bird dogger ever.
Thank you for the extra week, Anna Maria.
We did something that seemed impossible, which was to make this nomination a real fight. We seized the moment and made it a fight about our lives. We told the story of who we are and our vision for this country. And we did it with so much love and through so much pain and with so much courage. What women and survivors are doing in this moment is allowing the country to see who we are, so that we can make a decision about whether we want to continue to be that place where so many women are ignored, where so many women are violated, where so many voices are expelled and pushed out of our democracy. That's who we are right now. And what we did with this fight was force a question in this country about whether this is who we want to be. And I think we know that this is not who we want to be. And this nomination does not stop that. What we have been able to do in this moment is show the country that politics can and should be centered on the stories of our lived experiences, and that our lived experiences are never one. They are unique to us, and they are collective and shared by all of us. And so that is true for every single one of us that has survived sexual violence. It is true for every single person who's fighting for healthcare. It is true for every single worker who's getting abused at the job. It is a personal experience that is collective in nature. And that's why the solution to all of it is collective power, people power. And we will continue to build people power. That is the only way we build the country that we want all of us to live in every day, and the children that we have to live in every day. I do believe that we will win. Yes. I do believe that we will win.
I believe that we will win. I believe that we will win. I believe that we will win. I believe that we will win. I believe that we will win. I believe that we will win. I believe that we will win.
All right, I feel like we need a collective deep breath. Can we just like look, make a connection to somebody, look at somebody in the eyes and just take a collective deep breath together. I know that our tears, our emotions, they're the most authentic way that we can show how deeply we love and care about this country and about our democracy. And so I am so grateful that so many of you are sharing your truth with us just right now in this moment. At the same time, I cannot find it in myself to be disappointed or sad in what has happened, because we have changed the course of history. Forever, this nominee that they wanted to rush through under a cloud of secrecy, full knowing the allegations against him, yet trying to hide that from everyone in this country, for the tenure of his time, if he makes it to this court, he will have to live, the country will have to live with those truths on full display. And Anna Maria said, we've been here before. One time we won in healthcare. And another time, we put them all the way to the mat. We took them all the way to the end. And against the will of the American people, they passed the tax bill. But they can't run on that tax bill. They can't talk about it in our communities. It's so unpopular that they have to run away from it. And that is the exact same thing they're going to have to do with this nomination. Your stories are not in vain. Your action is not in vain. But now is a time that we turn our sacred rage, that fury that is so deep in our bellies that it's hard to control, into collective action that builds power and transforms this nation. We start that not in November, not next month or next week, we start that tomorrow. So if you are in DC, or you can get to DC, or you can stay here in DC, tomorrow we are going to flood the Capitol. We are going to channel the West Virginia teacher strikes and the Oklahoma teacher strikes. We are going to channel the folks who turned out for the Women's March over and over again all across this globe. We are going to channel the brave folks, the workers and the unions who stood up against the attacks on our ability to collectively bargain together. We are going to flood this Capitol tomorrow at 9 a.m. Are you with me?
With you.
And let us remember one thing, at 9 a.m., right here in Hart, at 9 a.m., come join us. But let's remember, they will be open, and we will be here. And let's remember one thing, right? They say they're darkness, but let's think about the light. Because one thing we know is that there is $2 million sitting in a bank account right now to get rid of folks who don't stand with survivors, to get rid of Susan Collins, who did not stand with her constituents. That number will go higher, I'm sure, and in fact, it already crashed the website. So CrowdPack crashed because so many people tried to donate, so now you got to go to Act Blue. But you can still do it.
That's awesome.
That's true. That is true. That is true. You got to go to Act Blue, or just follow Adi Barkan. Look, I'm going to end here. Adi Barkan called us a year ago, and he said, I need all of y'all to be the heroes I know you are. And everyone across this country showed up. So we're going to show up tomorrow, and we're going to show up the day after, all across the country. Find an action near you. If you're not in DC, there is one in your community, I promise you. So get out there on Saturday and find some community. Because together, as a community of action, we are going to transform our country in November and beyond. I know we are going to win. We have already won. They wanted to slam this through. They held all the power. We took their power and we changed history. So thank you for what you're doing. Please don't be sad. Be emboldened. Be outraged. Be proud. Do not be in despair, because we've got all we need right here in ourselves. So let's do it. We're going to be here at 9? Yeah. All right, we're going to take the streets. We're going to head to the Supreme Court. We're going to show everybody that we're unafraid, that we're not tired, that we're not scared, and we're not ashamed to be on the right side of history. So let's get our energy up, and let's find a buddy, and let's get together.
The Supreme Court!
had your bag for like 4 hours.
Okay.
How about if we do a wrap?
Then take them into the streets, shut it down. Thank you so much for this.
Okay, everyone, this is Heidi Seek, the CEO and co-founder of Vote Pro Choice. We're partner organizations with act.tv, who has been live streaming today from the Hart Senate atrium. And what you've just heard is the response of many people who've been protesting for weeks and weeks about the statements from Senator Susan Collins and Senator Joe Manchin that they will support the nomination of Brett Kavanaugh. And it's, the vote is still tomorrow. There is still time. There's still 20 hours before the vote. So there is still actions that can be taken. All is not lost. But just like we heard Jennifer Epps Addison say, that we've already won. There is a midterm on November 6th, Tuesday, November 6th, in 31 days. And we know for certain that we will be out there voting and voting to show the values of the American people. As the CEO of Vote Pro Choice, we are so pleased to offer the largest pro-choice progressive voter guide in America, and you can bet that we're going to be out there in full force. You will have all the power that you need to transform America to the America you want to see, the America that you showed us, that we've showed everyone about the America that's unfolding. So I'll close by saying that the New York Times recently wrote an article that said something that I really appreciate, which is they call us the resistance, but in fact, it's the GOP and the conservative movement who is the resistance. They're resisting the America that's unfolding right now. And it's so great that we can all be a part of it. Thank you for being a part of it. Thank you for watching the act.tv live stream, and we'll be back to cover any actions that unfold in the future. Thanks so much.
He's supposed to be the rep. Perfect. Whew. You were fantastic. Really?